Hey everyone, and welcome back to the next edition of the ABCFC podcast, Bundesliga and A-League match week review. We're getting good with these now. We're back on track. Things are looking a little better. We'll talk about the Ashes on Thursday and the craziness of what happened in that game. For those of you who did come along to the watch along, thank you for dropping by. We've got another one planned in a couple of weeks. If there is a day free for that day-night test, you know, touch wood. There actually is one.
We'll know pretty quickly if there is going to be one, so
Yeah,
we'll certainly
exactly.
keep everyone posted on
But
that.
this is primarily a football video, so we're not going to go on about cricket too much. We'll probably do a quick overview of what happened in that crazy game of cricket when we do our tea break episode on Friday. Sorry, this week, of course, because I've got a dentist appointment and my jaw may be all swollen from anaesthetic by the time we're meant to record on Thursday. So that will be coming on Friday instead. But yeah, we'll probably go through the Ashes game then instead. Instead, this is football, so let's just get right back on track and jump straight into the first week of A-League and Bundesliga football that we've seen since the resumption of the international break. With some pretty bizarre results across both leagues and pretty bog standard results at the same. So, kind of almost like a standard week of football from both leagues you could kind of expect. Before we dive into it, how have you been, Ben?
Yeah, after the madness of Saturday, which was terrific, by the way, it was really enjoyable. But we'll get to that on more on Friday. But in terms of the round itself, Friday night not so good for me personally. But like the rest of it from both sides of the world was good. There were some really good results, and one of them I was just talking to you about off air. And another one which I'm probably closer to, which was a lot better. So some really good games and some really odd results. One in particular that you're probably wanting to really discuss in a bit more detail.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a really good weekend overall, um, and looking forward to getting into it on the resumption of the domestic action after the international break.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll dive straight into it. We shall with the Friday night game, which you were doing the notes for, of course. And apologies, Hoffenheim fans, but it's finally happened since the inception of this channel of ours that your team have failed to win a game. You're still unbeaten, but you did lose that winning run you were on up until that point. As a Bayern fan, I know all winning runs do come to an end eventually. Um, but yeah, what were your takeaways from their one-all draw with Mainz? A Mainz team
Well,
who, failed to win again, of
yeah,
course.
yeah, and mine's sort of trying to sort of kickstart their season. There's a few clubs that are sort of at that end of the table that are trying to do the same thing with varying success. But I did have a look at this one, and Hoffenheim's unbeaten run since this podcast started has been one of the talking points in the league so far, or the ABCFC era as I'm calling it. So
Yeah,
um, and the question would be, would Mainz, who are really struggling at the moment, along with Heidenheim, sorry, be able to take anything away from this game? And the answers to start with was no, because not even 10 minutes into the contest, they were down 1-0. Um, it was a really good ball in towards Fisnik Aslani, and it was Hanko Olsen, the old
really
Heiden.
good header
Yeah,
from the centre back. Just
so
going to
so
point that
so
out. Striker's finish
yeah,
from the
so much so
defender.
the commentators actually thought it was Aslani that had
I
scored
did
that
as well
one.
when I was watching the
Yeah, yeah,
highlights. I also did. So yeah,
yeah. Yeah, so look, that was really the biggest thing to happen in the first 45. It was pretty uneventful, but Hoffenheim, to their credit, continued to press, and I actually thought they may have done enough to double their lead, but Tim Lemperle had a goal basically scrambled off the line, which was a really good effort on his part, but they were actually made to pay on 80 minutes when Danny Da Costa fired home to give Mainz an equaliser, and it was actually his first goal for the club, so a long time coming for him, but yeah, they did really well to get themselves back into the game. With still 10 or so minutes to play. Um, but it was Hoffenheim who probably had more to show for their work overall. And Dominic Corsaw read for Mainz later on. That only aided Hoffenheim
yeah.
to
I'm
try
just
and,
gonna say
yeah,
might be one of the worst tackles I've ever seen as well. Like
mhm.
that was like a surefire leg breaker. That was from the from the Mainz player. Apparently
Yeah.
his ninth red card in the competition as well. So I think he's now the
I think the
record
commentators
holder.
did mention that, yeah.
Yeah,
But
he is the
look at it.
record holder for the most red cards from a player in Bundesliga history. So he's
Yeah,
got
they
that.
mentioned it was part of
Yeah,
history. So, But a little bit of late drama. So Elias Bebu had a header that was actually waved off. And this is quite close to stoppage time. But again, still unbeaten in the ABCFC era, and that's what we like
Yeah.
to see. Chester, what were your thoughts on this one?
I mean, yeah, I thought it was like, Mainz, they didn't play bad, but it's just been the story of a lot of their games since we've been on this channel. They haven't played awful football, but they haven't got the result that they would have wanted most out of the end of it. Although maybe you could say a draw against an informed Hoffenheim is a creditable result for a team like Mainz who are currently
Yeah,
struggling at the moment at the start of
absolutely.
this season.
Hmm.
But still, I just think it's another week that's gone by, and time is starting to, as that winter break creeps closer and teams around them, that we're going to get onto later in this pod, of course, continue to pick up wins and results and stuff. It's another slow step down towards, that relegation battle, which Mainz are not going to want to be in come the latter stages of the season. Hoffenheim, you know, like they didn't win, but they were the better side. They played like their position suggested. Unlucky in the end not to have that goal. Having that goal ruled out. I mean, yes, it was creditably offside, obviously, but it's still a creditable point for Mainz, I'd say. But yeah, it's another one where, as creditable as it is, they're still going to have to be looking at the winter break approaching, the fixtures they have ahead of them, and even after the winter break, and just
Hmm.
thinking like we got to win a couple of these games soon because otherwise we are going to be in really real trouble.
Yeah, absolutely.
This
Yeah,
European football thing, obviously, the longer that goes on, the longer. I mean, yeah, it's obviously going to make it difficult for them, but they've got to do something. You know, I'm just thinking that a slightly bigger club maybe than the clubs around them, especially like some Heidenheim and your lot, who are also down there, and maybe they have the ability to strengthen where they might desperately need squad depth come January, but
yeah,
that does
yeah,
remain to be seen, of course.
yeah.
And
I
right
was
now,
I was
as
just going
things
to say the
stand,
same thing.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
right now as things stand, they're still right in the mix of those relegation teams, and they need to pick up wins soon. Otherwise, they're going to start to get cut adrift week by week, and that's not a position that they're going to want to be in.
no,
As for
definitely.
Hoffenheim, though, fine, they didn't win, but they're still unbeaten, and they are still well and truly right up in the mix for European football themselves next
Absolutely.
season. So fair play to them. All right.
Yep. And they could get stronger in the January window, as you said as well. There's on the other side of the coin, you've got these relegation threatened teams who would need to boost their squad, but Hoffenheim and others have probably got the luxury of boosting their squad to try and get
If they
into
even need
Europe.
to, because sometimes if you're in that
That's right.
position and you got a tightly knit group of players, and you're not being distracted by other competitions. Of course, they're out of the Pokal. They're obviously not in Europe. Um, they've only got the league to go for the remainder of the season. So maybe they don't even need to strengthen in January, so long as
Yeah.
injuries are good to them. I can see with the squad they have at the moment still being more than capable of making a push for European football come the end of this season. So
Hmm. Yeah,
you
it's
know,
a good problem to have,
yeah.
definitely.
So yeah, that that's basically how I see that at the moment. We'll move on to my team next, who came up against a team that your team played last week, as is so often the case this season already, that we just swap teams week after week after week. And honestly, for the first 20 minutes in this game, teams below us, Dortmund, Leipzig, Stuttgart, Leverkusen, and so on, probably looking on at this going like, yes, Freiburg, get in. You found the weakness that Union exploited and showed the way. Freiburg, with a ridiculous start, 2-0 up before 20 minutes were on the clock when I was watching it. I was just like, what the hell is going on here? Just two goals from corners, just like we conceded two from corners against Union before the international break. Suzuki, you obviously scored before the international break for Freiburg against you guys, of course, though you know well and truly that he's, starting to come into goal scoring form. And then
Hmm.
Manzambi grabbing the second, and things were looking relatively pear shaped at that point in
Yeah.
the match for Bayern. And as I said before, teams below us starting to look up and go, oh, they drew last week, they're 2-0 down now. Oh, that door at the top is starting to widen,
Yeah.
starting to widen. Well, had
Yeah.
they checked the score at full time, it slammed shut in their face again, though. What a ridiculous comeback that was. If that's not a statement to the rest of the league and the fact that we're going to potentially walk the league once more this season, I don't know what is. From 2-0 down to 6-2 up is just utterly ridiculous. And the most ridiculous thing about it is I've been singing this guy's praises for over a month now. Leonard Carl was the one who, in my opinion, turned the tide on that game for Bayern. This young kid, he's been good and good in recent weeks. He got his first home goal in the Bundesliga in this game, and he was just instrumental throughout in helping us win this game from 2-0 down. And you'd think with the players we have, like Luis Diaz, Elise, Kane, all of whom were on the pitch, Kimmich, Goretzka, the list goes on. A young Leonard Carl is the one who stands up above all of them and takes the game on his shoulders and basically says, you know what? I may be like 18 years old or 17, 18 years old or whatever it is, but I am ready for this league. And I mean, I know what you made of his performance, but it was truly remarkable. And Germany are starting to look at a lot of these younger kids in the Bundesliga. He's another one who's got to be looked at come the new year in the next international break, in my opinion, because he's looking that good for us. Really well taken finish. Got an assist as well to set up Elise to pull it back to 2-2. And from that point on, we basically did what we do best and dominate teams and score goals and win games without putting too much gloss on it, essentially. As I said, Freiburg started well. They looked like they found the key to unlock our defence like Union did, but unlike Union, the defence just wasn't up to scratch from that point on. And as soon as we pulled it level, it only looked like there was going to be one winner. Makengo is one I want to point out in the defence for Freiburg, who I thought had a torrid time out of fullback. Michael Elise was absolutely loving his time in that game against Makengo, just turning him inside out, doing all sorts. Like Carl was he couldn't get anywhere near the players, especially in the second half, and pretty much a game to forget for him. We bounced back after losing that ridiculous winning start to the season at Union, and all of a sudden everything's forgetting them. We've got Arsenal coming up in the Champions League, and I can't wait for us to do them in as well. And then we got you boys next weekend, which is going to be another good one for us, hopefully. So
Thanks for the reminder. I can only hope that defensively from our point of view, and we'll get to our game. It was the last game of the round, but hopefully defensively, we put up a good fight. I think we did last season from memory, but when we were in much better form. So, I mean, I guess my take quickly from this one is that I was watching the highlights this morning before we jumped on, and I was very surprised at the 2-0 deficit, but just how quickly you guys were able to pick that back, and by half time we were sort of back in total control. So it's just the mark of a quality side in whatever competition you're in. They're able to pile on those goals quickly, and they just know exactly what to do. And I guess Freiburg probably forced you guys to play eventually, and that's what you did. So, and as for the German setup, you said just before they're looking at some of these younger guys to step in, and I think the last squad they picked for the recent international games, Yesai Almala of Köln, and a few of these, a few of these other guys, it certainly speaks to that you can get opportunities in the national team set up from good Bundesliga form, which is only going to be a good endorsement for the league.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that we'll move on to the next game, which was another 6-goal game, although this one was a much more even affair. This was one hell of a game. I got the pleasure of doing the notes for and covering in more detail. Dortmund for once managed to score more than one goal in a game. Sorry, Dortmund fans.
Well, I wonder if that's the first week since the opening week when they played us, and it was a 3-3 draw.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It was 3-3 against the ever impressive Stuttgart, and my word, if we're going to talk about hat tricks, can we just talk about Dennis Undav's hat trick? It is a masterclass in finishing.
Absolutely.
Just all three, especially the first and the third, were just unbelievable finishes from him. Like, talk about a captain's performance. I mean, we'll go back in time a bit though, obviously, because all three of those came in the second half. Dortmund were actually 2-0 up early on in the game. Maxi Bayer came back into the team. I think he might have been out through injury recently or just not being selected, but he came back, got himself a goal. A bit fortuitous, I have to say, but any attacking player is going to take them, obviously. After Chan had opened from the spot, I believe that's 10 from 10 for him now from the penalty spot in the Bundesliga, which is just pretty ridiculous. But yeah, Dortmund were the much better team in the early exchanges. I mean, apart from a couple of half chances, maybe from Thiago Tomash, not really looking like Stuttgart were really on the ball. And then as soon as the second half began, they just turned a page, Stuttgart, in terms of the match, because Dennis Undav was unplayable in that second half. Angelo Stillo up to his usual tricks. Please sign him in the summer United, I beg you. Um, I want him so badly at the club. Yeah, but yeah, he was up to his usual tricks, kind of pulling the strings in the middle of the park, and Stuttgart just looked like a different team after the break. And then, obviously Dortmund went and grabbed themselves a third. Funny that it would be Guirassy to score again. Oh, wait, was it Guirassy? Actually, no, he scored the offside goal. My bad. Sorry, people. There was so much crazy things happening in that game, you completely lose track of what happened. No, it was Karim Adeyemi, of course, getting himself in the headlines for the right reasons this time for Dortmund, who thought he'd won it late on. And then Dennis Undav turns up, spins his man, and just puts one perfectly in the bottom corner to complete one of the most remarkable hat tricks of finishing you're ever going to see from a striker, in my opinion. And that was how the game finished. And yeah, I mean, both sides will probably be a little annoyed that that they didn't win, considering we got back to winning ways. And after last week, they were probably looking at it going, maybe we can sneak in to this title race here potentially, to a title race here potentially. But yeah, the draw favours my team, and it probably doesn't favour either of those. But still, take nothing away from what was probably the best game this round, in my opinion, because the football was truly remarkable from both sides.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
what were your takes on that crazy game?
Look, I definitely would agree that it was the game of the round for mine. And as I said, sort of going through the highlights, Undav was superb, and that stoppage time winner was excellent. You're not going to see too many winner hat tricks in that division or any other division for that matter.
The finishing, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, superb, and just the ebb and flow from both sides. It was just a quality game of football, and I did like the little sort of mini drive by, given the fact that they're further drifted by now. I mean, that would have been, you would have had a smile on your face sort of after that result. But
Yeah, it was a
yeah,
perfect result. I was like, when Dortmund went 3-2, I was like, oh, fine, whatever. But then when I saw they scored, when they got that third stuck, I was like, okay, that's what a result that is for us. Dortmund dropped points in back-to-back game weeks. It's perfect. We love it when Dortmund drop points.
yeah. But I mean, these are the sort of games that we, as now that we're watching all the games over a weekend in some capacity, these are the sort of games you want to see. We had some 6-0 blowouts, and we've had some really poor games. But the really high
4-0
pressure, high
against
intensity,
Gladbach a couple of weeks ago.
yeah,
Come to mind, you said poor games.
yeah, exactly, yep. So I've just erased that one from my memory, mate. So thank you for letting me know. Timely reminder and all. But yeah, these are the sort of games that you want to see as a neutral fan, and it really lived up to the hype. And as you said, Stuttgart would probably be happy with the point, but Dortmund dropping points after a
I
good
mean,
run of
I'll
solid
be honest.
wins.
I mean, I know Stuttgart probably happier because of the fact that like they came back from 3-2 to draw late on, but I still think they would have fancied themselves. They should have won that game either way,
Mm,
just because of how Dortmund dropped off in the second half and how they sprung to life and like just flipped it on its head
yeah,
almost.
they never
So
gave
yeah,
up, that's for sure. Yeah,
but not to be outdone by an 8-goal game in Bayern, a 3-goal game at the Signal doing a 6-goal game, sorry, at the Signal Iduna Park. We had a 7-goal game at Koln. So what a week we've had here, right? Another one I was quite fortunate to do the coverage of, and all the notes and stuff. Come on, like some weeks you've had good games, some weeks are bad. It's just how the cookie crumbles.
crumbles. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
So yeah, crazy game of football there as well. Köln 3, Frankfurt 4 is what it finished. Köln took the lead relatively early on. We've been talking about goalkeeping howlers and poor goalkeeping performances. We'll put Zessera in this list as well. Just complete overcommitment on a ball he probably didn't need to overcommit to. Gets cut back. Kaminsky, still a really good finish, mind you, but it's an open goal nonetheless. And Köln get off to the perfect start at home against a Frankfurt side who've been relatively inconsistent at the beginning of this season, I'd say. But then they just turned the tide, Frankfurt, and showed why at the beginning of the season so many people, I think, were tipping them to be right up there, in amongst that top four throughout the whole season and come the end of the season, because they just took complete control. Um, from that point, Arta Tiat, the Belgian getting his first goal for the club. It's good for him. Dahoud, he's had loads of injury problems recently. It's good for him to get back on the score sheet. And then, of course, the main man up front, Jonathan Burkhardt, once again having another outstanding performance, leading their line with 2 goals of his own. And that Frankfurt attack, when it clicks, boy, does it look good. Ritsu Doan was fantastic for the second game running for Frankfurt. I thought set up the third goal and was just throughout the game was just terrorising the Koln defence from how without that trickery and how good he is with that ball at his feet and stuff like that. I mean, he is one that's going to have to be one to watch for the World Cup for the Japanese team, that's for sure.
Oh,
Considering how
without a
good
doubt,
he
yeah.
started this season for Frankfurt.
Yeah.
And again, I mentioned it before, but Jonathan Burkhardt, there's a real question if he should be on the plane as a part of that Germany squad as well. You know, so there's a real question there as well. I thought, once again, that's that second goal of his in the second half, the control, the touch, the turn inside the defender, the finish of a bit of fortune, but still he made his own luck as a striker should, as any good striker would in that position. And at 4-1, it was looking like they were going to win it comfortably, but then Koln decided to have a little late show up of their own. With 2 goals and potentially could have got the fourth and brought it back to 4-4 even, I'll say. Another crazy game of football this week, right, where it's just kind of seesawed in parts of the match. Luca Waldschmidt scored in back-to-back games. Good to see him getting in goal-scoring form again after a lean couple of years, really, overall. And then Marius Bulter, of course, getting the third, and had a chance to get that fourth later on as well. It's just another crazy game of football. Another impressive performance from Koln at home, despite the fact they lost and did concede 4. Still another performance that doesn't make me think in any way whatsoever that they're going to go down. No. So, for the newly promoted team, I think they're settling to life back in the Bundesliga like they never left. I mean, I know they were only gone for like 1 season, but still. But yeah, I just think not amazing for them to concede 4. Frankfurt were outstanding, and Köln were outstanding at the beginning and the end of the game, but ultimately wasn't enough. What were your takes on that crazy game of football?
Oh, look, I'd certainly agree with a couple of points about Burkhardt because he was terrific. I think he came off the bench in one of the previous games a few weeks ago, and maybe that gave him a bit of a boost. But yeah, just his level's improving every season. As you said, he's certainly in that discussion to be on the plane for the World Cup next year in the US. But from a Köln point of view, and sort of furthermore with Ritsu Doan, yeah, you've got some quality Japanese players in this league who'll certainly be in the discussion for the Japan side next year as well. But from a Köln point of view, yeah, look, they've settled back in really well. I don't think this was a defeat that they could really be too down about. They've had some really good performances recently.
Look, had it finished 4-1, 5-1, then obviously it's a different story. Yeah. But I mean, the fight back at the end kind of shows. I mean, it shows 2 things. It shows Köln are still up for the fight in the Bundesliga this season, but it also shows Frankfurt still have that weakness of just switching off when they're in control of games, which we've seen happen a few other times this season. So,
and that's I guess why. On the other hand, Frankfurt do have that ability to sort of flip the switch and punish teams and get results like this. But yeah, like you said, they've got that defensive weakness that can be exploited as well. And with the Waldschmidt goal and the Bulter goals, that's exactly what happened. But Frankfurt in the end holding on for an impressive 3 points. But yeah, Köln not to be outdone. They can still be pretty pleased. Especially finding their feet sort of mid-table when you've got a bit of a scrap going on with other sides that are just trying to get results.
Yeah. So we'll move on to the next game, and this was a win that was desperately needed for the home side, and boy, I mean desperately. I don't think they've won since we began this channel, and now they've broken a duck. That's Augsburg I'm talking about. Narrow game compared to the games we've literally just spoken about, but a win nonetheless. 1-0 against Hamburg it finished, and boy, did they fucking need that win, Augsburg. Because recent weeks they've just been looking like they're so close, yet so far. And they finally got one over the line. Congratulations, Augsburg fans. Your team deserved it. Somewhat. I mean, well, yeah, I'd say they did. They desperately needed that. And, I always sing his praises because he played for my club, and I did quite like him for the season or 2 he was at the club. Just kind of, in a weird way, just kind of one of those likeable players, even though he wasn't the most prolific striker. congratulations, Sandra Bag. That's a deserved win for you right there. It's a deserved win, and it gives them a little boost of confidence, and maybe they can maybe nick one more between now and the winter break to give themselves even more confidence for the second half of the season. Um, yeah, they kind of largely dominated throughout the game. I have to say, Augsburg. Daniel Hoyt Fernandez, in my opinion, has been one of the better keepers this season. Made another few good saves early on to keep it 0-0 in the first half for in the game. I mean, they did score a goal like Augsburg quite like halfway, I guess, like midway through the first half where Reeder scored, but that was quite quickly chalked off for offside and correct decision. Nothing controversial about that. I don't think it wasn't really until the second half when the moment came, and for his first Bundesliga goal, it was a great volley, albeit from relatively close range. It was still a really good side-footed volley from Kade, which turned out to be the only goal of the game, of course. I think Hamburg have, in recent weeks, after we've been saying, oh, they've been playing well, they should get there eventually. They're starting to slip a bit, and I am a little
Yeah.
bit concerned about them. They are starting to slide towards that bottom three as we approach that winter break. And it was another one of those games where I think their forwards have to start kicking themselves because some of the chances they miss in their games, and especially in this, they should not be missing them. They had three really good chances throughout the match, and all three of them from really good positions, and all three of them were poorly missed. Königsdörfer in the first half kind of just snatched at one when it fell on his feet on the edge of the Signal box when he probably should have done a little better with that. Um, that Georgian with that ridiculous name, which I'm going to pronounce because I just think you'll butcher it beyond belief, and I might butcher it as well, but let's just try. Um,
Gotchalisvili.
Gokchalichvili or Gokalichvili, sorry.
Yeah.
Correct us in the comments, please, Augsburg, Hamburg fans, sorry. But yeah, he had one which fell to him in the second half, really, time and space, just fired it straight at Finn Darman. And then towards the end, one of my favourite players this season so far for Hamburg, Dompe, missing another one from close range, which really he should have done better with. But yeah, Augsburg get a much needed win. Finn Darman gets a much needed clean sheet
Yeah.
somehow,
Yeah.
because you know my thoughts on him. Um,
Yeah, I was just going to say he'd be
yeah,
really relieved to keep that clean sheet, and we've talked about him and multiple keepers on this podcast in terms of really bad errors, and that'd just be good for him to give him a bit of a confidence boost.
yeah,
And look, from my point of view, I do still clearly remember Hamburg snatching a point at the death against Dortmund before the break, and look, that gave them some really good confidence. But this is, yeah, you're right. This is the sort of result where they are now starting to slip into that sort of cluster of bottom sort of 4 to 5 sides, and my side is definitely in there. So I'm not going to sort of smile too much,
yeah,
um, but yeah, I mean Dompe has been good all season. Königsdorfer actually did score that equaliser in the previous game, and would have thought they would have wanted to try and get more out of it. But for Augsburg, it's a bit of a sigh of relief for Sandra Wagner and co.
yeah.
To be sort
Despite the
of
red card,
yeah.
despite the late red card for
Hmm.
Schlotterbeck, they
Yeah.
still managed to hold on. So yeah. So yeah, massive 3 points for Augsburg. Hamburg are starting to be one of those teams I'm getting a little bit concerned about though,
Hmm.
because they haven't won in a while, and now it's starting to become a question of maybe they aren't made for the league. I'm not trying to piss off any Hamburg fans, but you are starting to be brought into that relegation conversation every passing week. So
Hmm.
a win
Yeah.
is now needed for you guys, I think.
Yeah. And that
Just to
yeah.
smooth it over a little bit
Yeah.
before the break happens.
Definitely. And speaking of teams where wins are really going to be needed pretty soon, that actually takes us into our next game, and
Yeah,
that was Heidenheim
you.
at home
How
to.
did you see this one? This was obviously now we're now into
Look.
the rest of the games now are the ones you covered, but we've done all the ones I've covered now. So,
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah,
It's look, it wasn't really much of a surprise to me for two reasons. One, Heidenheim has been in awful form this season, and Gladbach sort of back where they feel that they should be. They've really had a really impressive resurgence in the probably the last month, with some really good results. But it was 3-0 to Gladbach. They were looking to bank another 3 points in their resurgence, but Heidenheim, really, they're in all sorts of trouble and winless in five, and obviously is now winless in six. But Tabakovic's crossbar challenge entry almost had them in front pretty early. And he's been a real
Oh
catalyst
yeah,
for
I
them,
think I think he's
definitely.
in this resurgence. He's been excellent. I think like
Yeah.
very very good, and he could be another player who's at the World Cup depending on how Bosnia go through the playoffs. And I want to correct myself when I bring up Bosnia. I think it was last time when we did this last week. I did say incorrectly say Vasil was Kosovan. I am correcting myself. I was a bit stupid. I knew he was Bosnian. I don't know why I said he was Kosovan. But yeah, either way, both teams got into the playoffs of the World Cup. For the World Cup, I just completely got his nationality wrong. But yeah, continue.
Somehow I don't think it'll be the first time
Yeah,
before the end of the season that happens. But yeah, look, and you're right. Look, there's probably a few guys within these notes that I did take note of. And one of those other ones is Kevin Dix. He actually had a second penalty in a matter of weeks and made no mistake.
really good
Um,
penalty. I like to
it was, and for
say.
Heidenheim to
Really
concede
good.
so, you know, Heidenheim to concede so late in the half, it was really disappointing. I felt they weren't terrible in the first half, but there's been other games this round where you have teams conceding late in the first half, and it's really not a good look for them, and it probably tells the tale for the second half. But the lead was doubled just before the hour mark. This was a brilliant ball from Rocco Wrights on the right hand side, and found Tabakovic again, who basically finished it off. I thought Heidenheim had some good moments, testing not tickling, testing Nicholas in goal. But there was really nothing that was going to get him back in the game. It was pretty much done by then. But the last goal was a really clever one. It was Shuto Machino, former Holstein kill striker and the super sub now. Seems to be a really good role for him, and there's a number of
And
players on the
every
move
week he
off.
comes off the bench and does something. It makes you more and more annoyed with the fact that you really wanted him, didn't? Like,
Well, I think it also
yeah.
speaks to the Japanese discussion about these players
Oh, he'll
um,
definitely be at the
who
World
are going to
Cup.
be on that plane. And
Yeah.
Joel Chima Fujita, who's one of our players, is another one of them. But yeah, he made it 3-0, and it really just shows how valuable these bench role players are in the division. And there's multiple players who can sort of fit that description as well. But it was another 3 points to Gladbach ahead of the cup meeting with St. Pauli next week. So I'm pretty keen to see how that plays out. And
Yeah.
Heidenheim would just be happy with a draw right now. To be honest, I don't know where their next point's going to come from, and that's not just for them, but for St. Pauli as well, and Mainz. Um, they've really got problems, and um, we probably talk about even at this time in the season before the winter break, sides that probably just start looking the part. Heidenheim are definitely one of them, and we've talked about how they actually struggled to stay in the comp last season, having almost lost the promotion playoffs. Sorry, relegation playoff. It's showing. It's really showing that that's a bit of a hangover from that, and not the first hangover I'll probably talk about in the podcast today as
Yeah.
we sort of wrap up some other games. But
Yeah.
yeah, just they'd be really disappointed. But Gladbach, they're back.
Yeah, they are 3 wins on the bounce. I think 3 clean sheets on the bounce as well, if I'm not mistaken, as well,
Mm,
which is just mightily impressive. I mean, I called it when we played them. I said they're looking like they're beginning to turn the corner, and I am correct. But yeah, I mean, when we talk about Heidenheim, just quickly before we move on, I mean, it's getting to the point of the season when you're starting to have an idea of who you think's certainly going to go down, who you think's going to be in the conversation to go down, who you think is going to be in the battle,
yeah,
maybe stay up, and so on and so forth. And then who you think
absolutely.
is going to stay up.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah,
Wolves in the Premier League. If I'm going to make a quick Premier League, like everyone knows that Wolves are practically gone down at this point because it just doesn't look like they're going to stay up anymore. Obviously, likewise with Sheffield Wednesday in the Championship, but that's because of a points deduction. Um, but yeah, with it's the same in my opinion. I think now with Heidenheim, I'm just starting to look at it and I'm thinking like I just think they're gone at this point. I,
I
I know this league can throw up crazy results and teams can go on crazy runs of form, but I'm just looking at it week by week. It doesn't look
mm,
like they're really playing well. They're not, they score occasionally, but defensively they always look vulnerable. It doesn't matter if they're playing at home or away either at the moment. They could lose
the form's
games at
just as
home or
bad.
away at the
Yeah,
moment.
yeah,
I know they're playing a team who are in form in Gladbach, but still they've played teams who are out of form recently and haven't looked good
yeah,
against them either. So it's
yeah.
just kind of one of those things. They've conceded 9 goals in 2 weeks. I know they played Leverkusen and Gladbach, but still it's not a good look. And
No,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm starting to look at it and be like, yeah, well, I think that's one of the relegation spots taken, and I think it's
Yeah.
probably going to be bottom spot taken from them
Uh-huh.
because, yeah,
Yeah. My last thought on that is actually what happened last season with Bochum, and pretty much the same thing happened. They were not able to get a win until probably just before the winter break, and ironically, it was either their first or one of their first against us. And I think I actually mentioned this game to you a couple of weeks ago off air. It was a shocking game. I think there was snow, and they beat us 1-0, and that was the last game before the break, I think, and that was the catalyst for them to have a bit of a boost. But in the end, I mean, it didn't really help them. They went down, and it's got that sort of feeling for Heidenheim written all over it in this campaign. But I mean, we'll see what happens with them. But yeah, Gladbach have been really impressive. But the next game that I covered was Wolfsburg going down to Leverkusen, and Wolfsburg still desperate for that home win against a Leverkusen side back in form after back-to-back victories. It was Poku and Grimaldo that worked really well to set up the first goal for Jonas Hoffman inside the first 10 minutes. Real pattern with side scoring in the first 10 to 15 minutes in the
yeah,
last few
that's true.
games.
Yeah,
It's good for the highlight makers and you and I that watch them.
yeah,
Gives us something to sort of talk about. But really poor from the home side conceding so early yet again. Um, and the fans actually showed their displeasure in the stands with banners. I can only imagine sort of wanting the ownership out because my German is incredibly limited,
yeah.
so
I
I
mean,
couldn't actually
Wolfsburg are
make out
not going
exactly what they
through.
were saying.
Yeah,
So
I mean, Wolfsburg are not going through a good time at the moment. Let's just make that. I know they've come up against a good Leverkusen side, but like, you know, it's just it wasn't, another relatively not heavy defeat, but another poor defeat for them. I know they almost got back into it late on, but the goal was ruled out. Yeah, I mean, they've won a few games recently, and I'm not saying sitting here they're going to go down, but they're definitely right now one of those teams that I'm thinking are going to be in and around the bottom three for the majority of this season, the way things are going for them. Unless they have a ridiculous turnaround the second half of the season, but I think, yeah, it's still not looking good for Wolfsburg, so yeah. Um, so yeah, it's hard to read into it when they're playing better teams, but just overall when you look at the results that have happened recently, it's not looking good for them
no,
specifically.
and they're another one of those that if things don't change, they'll be well and truly dragged into that sort of bottom three or four discussion. But in terms of from a Leverkusen point of view, Tapsoba was on target 15 minutes later, so that's two goals conceded in the first 25 minutes. It was a brilliant header
Yeah.
to set the tone. Malik Tillman with a great through ball from Schick on 34 minutes was just more evidence of not just their dominance, but how easily the home side could be broken down. And they're not the only side. We've talked about St. Pauli being broken down pretty easily, but 3-0 at the half just sort of was really just papering over the cracks for
Yeah.
Wolfsburg. They were split wide open, really.
Yeah, and didn't really create much. I know they got one back in the second half, decent-ish header from Vavro, but really throughout most of the game didn't create enough. I know I said before they did get a second goal that was correctly ruled not to stand, but I just think Jonas Finn's not having a good season leading the line. Lovre Meyer missed a couple of they just in general missed a couple of chances they really should have put away in that game, as did Leverkusen for making it worse, to be fair. But yeah, it's not much more really to say about a game. Almost looking like a bog standard win for Leverkusen
Yeah,
against this Wolfsburg side. They keep themselves in the top four, and Wolfsburg have to just keep going week by week and fighting to pull them to keep themselves clear of that relegation zone by the end of the season. Really.
yeah. Well, I thought Flecken in the Leverkusen
Oh
goal was really important, and as we've said on this podcast, I am a card carrying member of the goalkeepers union, so it would be remiss of me not to sort
yeah,
of
yeah.
pump them up. But yeah, look, he made some really good saves, and stopped in and Wolfsburg from potentially pinching a point in the second half, and the game looked done at half time as we said, but that goal that Wolfsburg did pull back gave them pulse, but yeah, not to be, and as you said, Leverkusen remain in third, and that just leaves a couple of games to round out the action, and the next one was Leipzig winning 2-0 at home against Bremen.
The bog
Um,
standard win for Leipzig, really, wasn't it?
yeah. Look, I didn't have a lot to say about this one. I didn't think it was that exciting, to be honest, compared to some of the other ones. But um, just after the half-hour mark, the contest was ripped open by probably the contender for goal of the season so far. It was a Quadrago rocket just outside the box. Quadrago. I'll get the
Uadriogo. You misspelled it in the notes.
Uadrago. Yep.
Yeah.
Leipzig fans, let me know, please. Um, Outside the box, but Backhouse, yeah, didn't have a chance of stopping it. I don't think many keepers in the division or anywhere else would have gotten near it. Schlager with a late finish sealed the points for the home side. Yeah, pretty bog standard, as you said.
Yeah.
Bremen just outplayed, but not disgraced like other teams who have been by RB this season. And Augsburg was one of them. They got thumped 6-0 by RB maybe a month or so ago. So just proves that they can have these sort of standard 2-0 wins, but they can punish other sides on their day as well. What did you make of this one?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like a bog standard win, as I said before, for Leipzig, really. I mean, that Rodrigo guy looks like a real piece of talent, like a real bit of talent. He got his international debut for Germany in the transfer window, in the international break, and scored in that as well. And what a goal it was in this that he scored. This young kid with
Absolutely.
Leonard Carl and all these other young Germans coming through the ranks. He's another one, of course. Yeah, I think Leipzig just kind of showed up on the day and just did what they should do as the better team on paper and the team you'd expect to win that
Hmm.
game or get something out of that game and win comfortably. Keeps themselves well up and in the top four. Not a bad defeat for Bremen, not at all. We've seen already from them this season they've definitely got enough to be one of those mid-table teams. There's no like imminent worry that they're going to get relegated or be in a relegation battle even. In any case, it's
Hmm.
they're because they're not one of the teams over the top of the league. They're not going to win every week. There's going to be weeks where they get kind of outplayed, and this was just one of those weeks. So there's not really much to go off. It wasn't a bad performance for Bremen at all. Leipzig were just the better team
Yeah.
on paper, and therefore
Hmm.
the better team
Yeah.
on the day. It's as simple as football gets like that sometimes, but that's sometimes how football is. As
Yeah.
confusing as it can be, it can also be as simple as that sometimes. And
Hmm.
this game was one of those potential, like, sort of example of that, in my opinion. Yeah. And
Yeah.
then obviously Schlager coming off the bench gets a neat turn and finishes it off. Yeah, Leipzig 2, Bremen nil. I mean, we're not like glossing over this because we have our thoughts on Leipzig, but you know, it's just if Bayern had a performance like this, we would probably only spend a couple of minutes on it. So it's just how it is, really. And we'll move on to the final game of the round, which was your boys. And obviously, yeah, give you credit where it's due. You were talking about it off air just before we began recording. A creditable performance, much better than what we've seen in recent weeks. In terms of a defeat, much more kind of similar to a defeat you would have suffered last season rather than defeats you suffered this season. In terms of defensive solidity, now I don't know if that's just because you played better defensively, or if Union that aren't really a free scoring team and like to do a lot of their damage from set pieces. It could just be that. We'll find out next week, of course, when you
Or
play
or
a
the
team
week
you
after
are.
when we play a team.
Yeah.
I think we've got Heidenheim the following week, so
Oh,
that'll be I think that'll be the bigger test. Um, I mean, you know my thoughts on the game next week. I'm already sort of writing it off, and
yeah.
it's clear in the notes that I've actually put in here. But yeah, look, the massive boost for St. Pauli was the return of Jackson Irvine, um, for taking the armband as captain for the first time, coming back from that foot injury, but started midweek for the Socceroos in the US, and would only give his domestic side a boost.
I
But
did
look,
think he looked impressive, at points
mm,
in the game. On the highlights I've watched,
yeah,
he did have a few moments where he looked impressive. Not an amazing game all round, but still
it'll
definitely
take
looked
time.
like you missed him, though. Yeah.
Oh yeah, most definitely. I think that was pretty evident by the sort of the movement, and as I was telling you before we jumped on. But look, not a really exciting opening half hour. Good chance from Pereira Lage. It was unlucky not to go in, but as improved as their defence and Nicola Vasil both were, the home side conceded yet again on the opening. Uh, Conceded the opener, sorry, on the stroke of half time. It was Rani Kadira who actually took advantage of a second shot from a block after the Paoli defence yet again failed to clear, and they've had problems with that. In more recent games where they've just not been able to clear defensively correctly and they've been punished for it. I mean, Kadira is a seasoned pro, so you expect him to sort of bob up and score goals like that when the opportunity strikes. But it was actually the second half for mine where it actually showed the most gradual improvement in this Paoli side for weeks, and especially in the last fortnight. The defensive setup looked a bit stronger and more alert. We talked about that Gladbach game where they gave up, defensive errors. Really, you just don't give up in this division, and there was none of that. The passing was sharper. It allowed the wing play to open up a bit more and create attacking chances. even though most of those were sort of half chances, and Frederick Rono and the Union goal did have to make a few good saves, but wasn't sort of overly troubled. But it's really at that time now where the defensive setup looks better. They've got to get the house
It's a
from the
one game,
attacking point of view in order.
albeit
Yeah.
it's a one game sample size against a team
Mm.
who don't usually score tons of goals in games. But
True.
yeah,
Yeah, but it's something, right? So
yeah.
yeah,
So that's the thing. I mean, look, we can gloss it all we want, obviously, but the reality is, as we always say, painfully so, I guess, at this point, for those who watch, no matter how many times we bang on about the old winter break and stuff, but it is a factor in this league which can affect team seasons at times. And it is another one of those things that, look, the performance was better. We can't read too much into it for a one game sample, of course, for you guys, but it is still, in reality, an eighth defeat on the bounce now
hmm
in the Bundesliga,
yeah,
which isn't what you want
no,
happening going into the winter break,
no,
especially with you know your toughest game of the season obviously around the corner, and then a massive relegation 6 pointer after that.
hmm
It's it's almost now or never for you guys to get some points, let alone a win, just to get points. Because even Heidenheim, as we talk about before, obviously how we think they're practically going down, they've still shown they can pick up points on here and there. So a heavy defeat to Bayern, and not winning against a bottom of the table Heidenheim, could that be the end of Blessing before the winter break? Who knows, right? Because as
possibly.
better as the
We'll find
performance
out.
was,
Mm,
you created a lot more chances than you have in recent weeks in that second half, and you still look like you didn't know how to score goals, which is the
hmm
worrying thing.
Yeah.
Rono, he made a couple of good saves, but none of them were particularly outstanding.
No.
I know Union are very good at kind of that low block defending, and they showed it again in this game. Um, but yeah, without glossing on it too much, I mean, Union get a win away from home, which is something they haven't done all too often this season. It's usually been their home form which has stood up for them, but so good for them to get a win away from home. An improved performance from you guys, but it's still 8 defeats on the bounce, and it is starting to get worrying with two, a very difficult game and then a very, very big game to follow that. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I kind of view it right now. I think
Yeah. Yeah.
you guys.
Absolutely.
I think now you guys are definitely looking like you're going to be right in the thick of the relegation battle this season.
Yeah.
Whereas you stayed relatively clear of it last season. I
Last
think
season.
reality is you're probably going to have that battle on your hands this time round.
Yeah. Well, I'm just actually having a look at the upcoming games after this week, and it's Heidenheim and then Köln. Sorry, Köln first and then Heidenheim. So um, yeah. So there's definitely opportunities there to take points. It's just a matter of with this side, with Irvine back and things looking a little bit more settled in defence, can they get the attacking structure right to do what they did last season and start getting some points against better, not just better opposition, but the sides that they really should be taking points against. In
Yeah,
all honesty, but even though it doesn't look like it now, but that was the action from the Bundesliga for the
yeah,
weekend. So some really good fixtures, some not so exciting ones, but yeah, as we said, we take on your mob, Bayern, next weekend, and
yeah.
look, hopefully several buses will be parked in defence, no doubt. From a blessing point of view, that might be his only option, I think.
Well, I mean, they weren't narrow last season. We beat you 1-0 at the Milan Tour, and we beat you 3-2 at the Allianz. So you never know. Like, yeah,
If
but yeah,
Freiburg can score early, then maybe we can as well. That
yeah,
we might
exactly.
might take from it, but
2-0 up and lose 8-2. You'd take that, wouldn't you?
we'll see how it goes. But I mean, it's at I think it's Sunday 1:30 a.m. So I may actually stay up for the first 20 minutes
I know,
until
I'm just
until
gonna
it
watch it
kicks.
on the Monday morning, I
Uh,
think. So
yeah,
no
I
spoilers.
think I know I think so. So until we've conceded 2 goals in the first 20 minutes, and then I'll
So,
go to bed. So
something, yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, we'll that does it for the Bundesliga action. As you said, we'll move on to the A-League action as it resumed its action after the international break. And we just spoke about one of your teams losing. I will point out West Brom did lose to Coventry in the Championship. So
after a
let's just
2-0 lead,
let's
I
just
might
do
just
this.
add. So
Let's just do
yeah,
yeah. Let's just do this bang 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 3 in a row. Let's just jump straight into the Friday night game where another one of your teams fell to defeat this week. Yeah, it was. I mean, you guys have been so defensively solid this season. I was absolutely like just blown away by the fact that you lost 4-1, and the goals you conceded were just so preventable. Or
mm,
at least a couple of them
the
were.
first one absolutely was. It
Yeah,
was yeah, and look, our record at Coopers is awful. We haven't won there since 2018. and it was a shocking back pass from Schreiber. That's really the only way you can describe it. Beach had no chance of getting back to it. Ethan Alagic pounced on an open net from outside the box, and that was after just 12 minutes. But it was Luka Ivanovic who doubled the lead within the first 15 minutes. Slotted home past two City defenders, and not the best end to Patrick Beach's week after his Socceroos debut, really. His colours lowered. But the defence, to be fair, in those first two ends didn't really help him at all, didn't do him any favours.
Yeah. It was just one of those crazy games that happened. I mean, that you'd only conceded one goal, I think, in your first 4 weeks of A-League football this
Mhm.
term, and then you've shipped four in one game, and all of a sudden, you've had your worst performance by in a while, even going back to the beginning of last season, possibly. So,
Yeah.
yeah, Adelaide again looking brilliant at home. They haven't been so convincing on the road, but at home they've been good. And that young, there's a lot of teams obviously in the A-League this season with impressive young players, and Adelaide are no stranger to that. Alagic, DeCooley, Jovanovic, they got all these young attacking players who, when they hit their straps, boy, do they hit their straps, because this was another game where they just looked, imperious going forward. The intensity and the drive forward on the counter attack as you were pushing to get back into the game. Kanamori fired a contender for goal of the season for his
Oh, yeah.
first for you.
Yeah.
Is it first for you or is it first in the league? I'm not sure if he scored in the Champions League or anything like that, but
Might have been his,
obviously.
might have been his first in the league, but I'll have to check that. But you're right. It's gonna be shown on grand final night. I've talked about a couple of others that will be in that sort of highlight reel, but it was just superb. Um, just first touch, and just this is a guy that's had a massive lot of experience in the J League, um, and it shows. He basically rifled it home from distance, and he's actually been a really experienced and quality addition to the City lineup amongst all these academy kids and these young guys that are getting opportunities, and he'll continue to grow as time goes on. That City's got a home Champions League fixture during the week, and I'm sure he'll be part of that as well. But
Yeah. And that's
um,
the thing I do want to touch on.
yeah,
You've lost this game. Confidence maybe knocked a bit. Obviously, you're playing Mariners next. They've been super inconsistent this season. Are you a little worried about the Champions League, mate? The Asian competition,
very, yeah,
scuppering
absolutely,
your chances of being consistent as the season goes on,
yeah,
in terms of
yeah,
fitness and your squad depth, because you've already
hmm
got a lot of young players in that squad as well,
yeah.
as it is, and you don't have much in
Atkinson's out
reserve.
injured as well. Yeah, most
Yeah,
definitely. And I think it probably took some other results this weekend, and particularly with your mob, who we'll get to shortly, to sort of make me realise, hey, it might not be and Auckland as well. It might not be the easier ride that we had last season.
well, it wasn't easy because Auckland was still good last season, but yeah,
Easier.
yeah,
But yeah, look, I think, yeah, it definitely made me open my eyes to that, to say, we've got this lot of Champions League fixtures tied into away games essentially, because as I said, we haven't got a home game until the 20th
yeah.
of
I'm
December.
not going to
So
go back over that. I had my rant last time on that.
check out our last episode, or our second previous episode, to see Chester's rant about the quality of the A-League fixturing,
Yeah,
shall we say.
yeah,
But look, certainly Ryan White and Jay Barnett rubbed more salt into City's wounds with the third and fourth goals. And yeah, with the ACL and Mariners to come, they'll just need to brush this one off quickly. But can they respond is the question.
yeah. That's the ultimate question. So we'll move on to the Saturday fixtures, of which there were three. So obviously people won't know, because we were doing the Ashes live stream on Saturday. We really didn't have time to watch much of this. I watched the back end of the Sydney game later on that night. But yeah, we basically had to go off 3 minute highlights for this week, when normally we would be able to watch the full games. But we're still trying to get as much content out as possible and as much notes as we could get from that. So the next couple of games could be a couple of more games in the A-League this week we could be touching on a little quicker than we normally do, but that's just because of the fact that we had to literally go off highlights because of all the Ashes stuff we were doing. Is what it is. It's going to be a busy summer, and there's probably going to be a couple more rounds where we're going to have to do it like this. It's just what it is when we're trying to run both things for you guys on the channel. But nevertheless, we're still going to get it out there for you. We're not going to not cover the games. But yeah, so Wellington fell narrowly 1-0 to Macarthur at home. I thought there was a very poor performance from Wellington, who I think have looked relatively impressive to begin this season.
Mm,
I thought overall this game, probably not their best, in terms of performance-wise. The usual kind of intensity that they have going forward and the clinicalness that just didn't seem to be there in this game. They had chances, but they weren't taken well. Kind of snatched at a lot of them. They had a goal ruled out. Of course, because of offside from Eze. But yeah, other than that, I think it was a very tame game, and MacArthur won it quite, not comfortably, but they won it late on. But Wellington, didn't really turn up the way they usually do at home, and they've lost back-to-back matches at home. Of course, now having lost the derby prior to the international break. So yeah, good win for MacArthur, gets them back on the winning train after we beat them quite comfortably before the international break. But not particularly great from Wellington's point of view about that performance.
Yeah, and we talked about a few weeks ago they dropped a couple of points to Brisbane at home as well, so their home form sort of they are struggling to get results at home. But the guy I want to sort of mention is we talked about him previously for MacArthur is Harrison Sawyer. He came off the bench to bundle home the winner. And it's an important 3 points to take back to Campbelltown. Definitely a point missed for Wellington. It could have been better, but I think full credit to MacArthur for and they haven't been the best. They haven't been the best side to sort of watch in the last sort of few weeks, but they really took their chances in this one and got the result in the end.
Yeah. To the next game on Saturday, which will have far more in it, or at least as far as a first half perspective goes, because all the goals came in the first half, all 5 of them. Wanderers finally got themselves off the mark and finally showed they can play football at times.
Are you glad you got this game, Chester?
Yeah. What? All 3 or so minutes highlights of it. Yeah. Winning 3-2 against a very inconsistent Mariners this season, I might add. Got off to a really good start. Mariners shocking defense. You're just failing to clear their lines, and the ball's kind of bouncing around in the box. Kriev gets on the end of it. Good finish from him, kind of on the half volley. But then straight after, this game was just a bit back and forth all over. Straight after they go up the other end, Wanderers look a bit ropey themselves defensively, have at times, and then Lucas Moragas, good little volley, does get a helpful deflection off of Simmons on the way into the back of the net, and then all of a sudden it's 1-1, and it's like, what were we worried about? Well, later on, shortly, not too much longer, ball comes in, Costa Barbarouses, fantastic little just redirection to finish it into the bottom corner. And then all of a sudden Wanderers are back in front 2-1, and then Mariners just kind of have a bit of a careless penalty giveaway on Alu Kuala, I think it was. Barbarouses versus Redmayne, 2 former Sydney players coming face to face, and makes it 3-1. And then all of a sudden Wanderers have got themselves right back in a commanding position and looking for their first win of the season. And then before the half's out, they go and give away a penalty of their own, a little carelessly with a handball, maybe a little harsh, you could argue, but you see them given pretty much most of the time anyway. Great finish from Alfie McCalmont, that was. Pulls it back to 3-2. And then the second half just falls flat, apart from like a rasping drive in stoppage time from Nathan Paul, which actually brings a good bit of goalkeeping out of Lawrence Thomas for once. I think you'd be surprised to hear, Ben.
I was just going
to
say,
stop the roof lifting off back west and Mariners snatching a point and denying Wanderers their first win, but they still held on, got their first win of the season, and in good timing, of course, with the Sydney derby next up for them. Against a largely in form, which we're about to get onto in the next game. But about this game, what did you make of that quite weird game of football where it just felt like in the first half anyone could win it, and then as soon as it hit the second half, it felt like there was only going to be one winner because nothing was really created of note after that point.
Yeah, it seems to me, I guess pre-international break and post-international break, it's really been a bit of a thing where. And we've talked about one of these sides already in Wellington, but there's a couple of others in the Mariners, and one of them who started the season really promisingly and have had really poor.
Well, they've just been inconsistent. That's what I put it down to.
Yeah, probably.
They won the first week in the F3 derby, then they were poor and lost to us quite we beat them comfortably. Yeah. But then I think they drew or they beat Wellington. and then they got no, like they've just been kind of they beat comfortably, they've just been, and then they lost again. So it's just like they've been really like
up and
inconsistent.
down.
Like you don't
Yeah,
know what Mariners you're going to get each week. They're
that.
playing you, of course,
hmm
this coming week, and you don't know what's going to turn up. Are they going to
We
beat
need
you, or
to.
are you going to comfortably beat them? It's just
Well,
really hard to
that's the
know.
thing. They struggle because we need to get back on the winners list as well. But what I was just going to quickly say, it sort of has that feeling that yeah, there's definitely multiple sides in different ways that are inconsistent. They're one of them. Newcastle, and that's the game I covered that we'll get to later on. Um,
Speaking of consistency, though, let's talk about my lot. If you were trying to lead into it like that,
that's exactly what I was
because
doing. Yeah, let's get on to
we have
that game.
picked up from the we have picked up from the international break exactly where we left off and made it 4 wins in a row. And I did not, in that unuploaded predictions video we did way back when we first initially began this channel, before the technical issue meant we had to start it a bit later. I predicted us to just about. I don't know. We're early in the season, and my prediction could still come true. But the way things are looking at the moment, we're top of the league now. At the end of the week, after other results went our way, we've won 4 in a row, and we're looking like one of the best teams in the league at the moment. Albeit we haven't played you guys yet. We lost away at Adelaide in a tough game. Wanderers always give us a tough game where Derby's the old cliche, form goes out the window, and so on. Wellington away is tough. We haven't played Auckland, fine. We haven't had really tough games yet, but we still won 4 on the bounce. We kept 3 clean sheets in those 4 games, and we're looking right now as things stand. We're looking like one of the best teams in the league, and
Mm,
that's so pleasing. You
yeah,
know, feels like we're getting back to the Sydney FC dominant era that we us Sydney FC fans know and remember so fondly and vividly. Yeah,
well they
and it's
don't. They
always
don't.
good to do it in a big blue. Obviously, you
Yeah.
were here at mine after the resumption of the Ashes
hmm
test, and we watched the back end of that, and you were grinning from ear to ear when you watched Victory just completely collapse against us. Um,
Always good to watch that. But
yeah,
yeah,
they've
look,
lost back-to-back derbies, and they are
mm,
now in 11th in the table
yeah,
after Perth's result.
yeah,
So they have had a really poor start to the season themselves, Victory. But yeah, we're top of the table. We're loving life in
yeah,
that league right now, and we're looking pretty good for it. But yeah, Derby's up next, and those are always challenging. But yeah,
yeah.
Joe Lolly scores twice, got a hat trick against them last season, of course, in a result with the same scoreline. Then Alex Grant gets his first goal for the club from a corner. And it just looks relatively comfortable. I know it's a bit cagey the first half, not much on it, but we've had games like that recently, and we seem to get through it and then just kind of get in control in the second half and win games comfortably. And we did it again in this. 2 great finishes from Joe Lolly as well, I have to say. The defending for Victory for both his goals awful though. Just wide open on the edge of the box for the first, and the tracking back for the second is just non-existent from the midfield. If you watch it, it's just them just jogging carefully, jogging slowly. Roderick Miranda's basically been left to do all the defensive work himself and defend a free on and defend a situation where he's got 3 or 4 Sydney players like running an attack to support Lolly. So yeah, and then, I think maybe Jack Duncan could have done better on the header from Grant with the corner. Maybe not. It's hard to say. But yeah, by that point, it was done anyway. I know Grimaldi did score, which was disallowed for an offside, but that was really Victory's. They really were poor. They were poor in the derby, even though
Mm,
they had a lot more of the ball against you than they did against us. They didn't do much with the ball, didn't have great shot selection, didn't make the most of their chances. Against us, they didn't they were arguably worse against us. They didn't really have too much of the ball. The chance creation was few and far between, and apart from the disallowed goal, they really struggled. They flattered to deceive, I should say.
mm,
Um, and also from our perspective, Paul O'Connor, every week he's putting out performances, which just like he's looking incredible. This young kid is. And long may it continue. He's had another stellar performance in the heart of our midfield, and long may it continue, as I just said. So yeah,
well,
4 wins in
speaking,
a row for Sydney, 1 win and 4 for Victory.
yeah,
1 win and 5 for Victory this season.
hmm
We're
yeah,
top there, 11th. Couldn't be
uh-huh.
better, could it?
Yeah, no. Well, I was just going to say from the Victory point of view, long may it continue because I'm actually looking at the table now, and based on one of the other games from yesterday that I'll cover as we go along, they're down in 10th now, so
Oh,
uh,
10th.
equal,
Okay, right,
yeah,
right.
yeah, equal on points and goal difference with Perth.
Yeah.
So and we know how ordinary until yesterday Perth have been. So yeah, they've got massive problems, but you see me. frowning and being upset about that. Absolutely not. So, for all the issues my club's got with not being able to win games, it's nothing in comparison to them. And I'll be looking forward to the pre-Christmas derby, the traditional pre-Christmas derby coming up in less than a month now.
Which you'll
Um,
be at, of
I'll
course.
be in the stands.
Yeah.
That's right. So, and I can't wait for that. So, but yeah, they've got some serious problems, and Juan Mata would really be sort of wondering why he actually went to that particular club when he could have picked somewhere else to go, really, because they're not looking anywhere near the club that they used to be.
I
And I
thought you
just
were about to say they
no,
claim to be,
and
not
I
used to
no,
be.
and I just think and I just think that's fantastic for the game. So anyway, that was my take on this particular game. But yeah, you were pretty stoked with this
I love
result.
that.
Yeah,
They're not looking like any. I love what you just said. They're not looking anywhere like the club they used to be, and that's just fantastic for the game.
what can I say? We're always going to
Yeah,
be honest and open on this podcast.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah. So yeah, on to the Sunday games. And this was the game which meant we finished the week top of the table. I love you, Stevie, but thank you, Brisbane, for keeping them at 1-1 and taking points off them to keep us top. Auckland Brisbane, it was a fairly tame game to be honest. Both goals came in the first half, and the second half was as flat as any game I can think of that's happened so far this season. Not much at all happened for both sides in the second half. It just kind of all petered out. Both sides have been defensively solid to start the season, and it kind of showed in that game. A fantastic free kick for Lachlan Cook to open the scoring. Gets his first goal for Auckland. Really good free kick. Maybe Pizanis could have done better. And then Justin Vidic gets played through right on the stroke of half time, and he's a player who's been relatively decent when he's had chances fall his way this season so far for Brisbane, who, after a 3-0 win before the international break, a 1-1 draw away at Auckland is just another creditable result for a team that, in our predictions video, we were saying we're going to have a season similar to last season where they finished right down near the bottom of the table. And we're looking wrong week by week because they look like a very well organised team. And credit to Michael Valkanis because he's got this team playing a lot better than what they have in recent seasons. And, got to give him all the credit, especially with all the young, inexperienced players they have. Lucas Harrington,
yeah,
for me, the player of the match. He
hmm
scored against Newcastle goals. He
that's
was
right. Yeah,
unbelievable
yeah,
defensively in this game. He was keeping everything out. Sam Cosgrove barely had a sniff all game for Auckland.
yeah.
He was just closing down everything. He was winning headers, winning tackles, making blocks, interceptions. Incredible performance from the young centre back, I have to say.
Oh, most
Yeah, what
definitely.
were your
Yeah.
thoughts on that game?
Well, what I was just about to say was I did just touch on previously. There's been some sides who have been inconsistent, and Brisbane is the opposite of that. They had a really slow start, and I wasn't too sure where they were going, but they had a goalless draw against us, which I was impressed by them with. Um, and they've grown from there. They had that really good win against Newcastle, who have flatlined a little bit going the other way. But this was just another case of Valkanis really giving his side and there's young kids the ability to just go out and play their game and getting a draw against the side that most thought were going to be the number one contender for the title last season and sort of backing that up in the first sort of part of this year even more so. So credit to Valkanis and his group. Harrington, as you said, scored against Newcastle, and he was superb again yesterday. And they've got some really good young players to sort of call on. And I think if they can continue to improve, yes, they'll probably have some lapses and so forth as the season goes on. But I think they've been one of the more impressive sides, certainly more than Victory have been already this year. So yeah, credit to them. Really,
Just had to chuck that in there completely irrelevantly. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and that will take us on to the final game, the 15th and final game of this week's review, one that you had the pleasure of watching. Perth Glory fans, you'll be pleased to know that Ben does have some positive things to say about the team that he loves to slander more, maybe not quite as much as Victory, but probably second to that. Good win, their
Mm,
first of the season against
yeah,
the Newcastle side who were just from nowhere just starting to just plummet down the table after
unravel.
the impressive
Yeah,
5-2 win against Victory.
yeah.
Though I guess doesn't look as impressive now that we know that Victory are right down there as well.
hmm
But yeah, like it's just going wrong for Newcastle and Mark Milligan right now, and for
yeah,
Perth a very good win, after going 1-0 down, a good response. And the back end of the second half, it looked like they were the team who were just going to win it comfortably. Even though in the end they didn't get any more goals, but they still looked a much better team in that second half and the back end of the game. And
Yeah.
you said to me off air, you've finally got stuff to praise about Perth, so let's have it.
Well, certainly, I've said on this podcast, and what I did mention in the pre-season preview that didn't end up going nowhere, that their fans do travel in numbers, and they did again yesterday. So credit to them, which I've always maintained is a positive. So even back in the old NSL days, they were really well supported, and this is still no exception, even though their best football hasn't really been shown this year. But look, this game I think was one of the best games of the round, just simply because it was a real dogged effort by Perth to actually get the 3 points out of it. And I guess Newcastle, I'll probably use the term Australia Cup hangover perhaps for this one, because I really think that after such a positive start to the domestic campaign with that win in the cup and their early season form, they've just slipped really badly, and they're in a bit of a tailspin, pardon the pun, and it's really going to be up to Mark Milligan to sort of get his side out of it, because it's not a great look for them, and this performance for them was really disappointing. But all credit to the Glory for getting themselves up for this one, and getting the points away from home. Well, last up lost to Brisbane for Newcastle, and the result from Brisbane sort of just shows the trouble that Newcastle have got. But it only took a quarter of an hour for the Jets to take off. It was a clever through ball found. Was Xavier Bertoncello, one of the academy signings. He scored his first A-League goal, and the Glory fell behind again as a result of that. But they actually had Matt Sutton in goal to thank for not trailing 2-0 after the opening 20. Brian Kaltak, for me, was actually the rock of the Perth defence.
Yeah, he had a much better game
Mm,
than recent weeks. I think he
he's
definitely
actually been
stepped up again
responsible
and
for
showed
giving
his
up a couple of
class. Yeah,
goals, and he actually made two really good defensive clearances to prevent them going further behind before the end of the half. But it was Glory who worked hard, and they were actually rewarded for their perseverance. And Tom Lawrence equalised close to half time. It was a really good finish, reward for effort, basically.
yeah,
Um, but the controversial moment came late with a handball penalty that was looked at by VAR. Um, and I guess not Perth, Newcastle would probably be a little bit unlucky that this was given, but the land of the law, the lay of the law these days of VAR. Um, and Perth had the chance to take a rare lead. It was Nicholas Pennington who made no mistake from the spot. He sent the keeper the wrong way, and it looked like a first win finally might be in sight. And they really just appeared to want it more from where I was watching it. Um, they were really just scrapped all day, and Trent Ostler was actually a force for the visitors at the back. I think as a defensive
midfield.
unit,
What was he
midfield.
playing
So
in? Oh,
I think he was
midfield.
playing in defence, yeah.
Oh,
At least from what the commentary was telling me. But I did have a look at the lineup, and yeah, he was playing at the back. But I think as a defensive unit, they looked a lot better. I think I mentioned a couple of weeks ago that game against Victory and the game against the Mariners at home, where they were just awful and really easy to score against. There was none. There was little of that in this one. But the end couldn't come fast enough for Newcastle. It was Pennington who actually thought he had a brace, but it was Adam Taggart who got onto a midfield ball, and broke the defence open, but the call was offside. But they held on for a really deserved first win, overtaking the grounded Jets from the foot of the table. And yeah, the Jets have got issues, but Perth, that'll give them a really good boost. What did you make of this one?
yeah. As I said before, like you gave your thoughts on it. Like I just think Newcastle, they're not in a great run of form right now. And just they've lost to Perth, who pick up their first win of the season. Um, you know, Bad defeat, especially at home as well. That's the other thing we got to point out as well. And Perth, a bit of a confidence boost, and Newcastle fall to the bottom of the table now as a result of it. Um,
Sure,
and
it's certainly, yeah.
yeah, the teams you thought that were down there and around them, like Brisbane and so on, like how good they've been
Mm,
so far this season. And
absolutely.
obviously they handed it to Newcastle last week, of course. Well, sorry, before the international break.
Hmm.
So yeah, not great for Newcastle. Great confidence boosting win and a good second half performance. Well, good response to going behind in general from Perth after a slow start to that game to look like way more dominant for the rest of the game, especially like from when they took the lead and even when they equalised. So yeah, good job for Perth. Not great for Newcastle. They keep losing and they keep conceding goals. So they need to make something. They need to make a change because something's not working right now at that team. And you look at that team, you think, how are they going to cope in Asia next year? At the way things, if they're looking like this year, they've got to do Asia next year, right? So, it may be a few difficult years potentially for Jets. Who knows, right? Unless they get money, of course, from that Asian Champions League spot and they can make it count. Who knows, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we just talked before about how difficult City are finding it at the moment this year.
Yeah.
So that's possibly something
And
for.
it affected us last year as well. So,
Yeah, it does. It
and
does have
Mariners as
an
well,
impact.
right? So yeah,
Absolutely, yeah, it does have an impact, and it's really look. As I said, full credit to Perth for this one. They've had a really bad sort of few weeks, and it's good that they can sort of yeah, and without a permanent coach still as well. That hunt still goes on, so we don't know who that's going
yeah,
to be just yet. But
true. Yeah,
Adam Griffiths has had a really good impact on this side in his sort of stint, and experienced guys like Taggart is really helping the younger guys get results like this one yesterday.
yeah, exactly. So that wraps up another week of Bundesliga and A-League action. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. It's a bit of a longer one. We got a bit carried away again, but it is what it is. Obviously, we've got more live streams planned. Obviously, day 3 of the day-night test in a week or few weeks, I think, couple 2 weeks or something, if I'm correct. If there's a day 3, but we'll go into more detail about what went on with the Ashes test when we do our tea break episode this Friday. So look forward to that. Excuse me. Look forward to that, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this, of course. We'll be back again next Monday. If you just like the football content, we'll be back again, of course, next Monday for more of that. As we've already gone over many times, we've got the Sydney Derby coming up this weekend. We've got Bayern versus St. Pauli this weekend. So there's some big games happening, at least from those 2 points of perspective. Our 2 teams are playing each other in the Bundesliga, and, my team's got a big game in the A-League. And we got Champions League midweek, and we don't cover that, so I don't know why I brought that up.
Because
So, yeah.
hopefully Bayern will rest a few players for the weekend. That's what I'm taking out of that, and then we might actually have a
No,
chance
I want to
against
absolutely. I want full
yeah.
strength against Arsenal. I want us to absolutely do Arsenal in.
Anyway.
Yeah. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. We'll be back on Friday with our next tea break episode, and if it's just football content, and obviously next Monday if you want some of that. So yeah, that will do us for this week, I reckon. So yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. Peace out, take care, and we'll see you on our next video. Bye.
Take care, guys. Have a great week.
Bye.